Dear colleagues, is it working? Yeah. So, my name is Radosław Biel, and I'm a PhD student of Wrocław University of Technology and Science, and also an editor in the Polish popular science archaeological magazine Archeologia Żywa, like shameless plugging. I'm here on behalf of a much bigger team. It's consisting archaeologists, historians, physical and cultural anthropologists, also botanists and zoologists. We are also cooperating with forestry services and local associations working to protect the heritage of forests. Unfortunately, my co-presenter and boss, Paweł Konczewski, visible on this photo, couldn't join us, but thanks to that, I can at least admit truthfully that our title is a little clickbait, or should I say, hearbait, because in the next 20 minutes, as especially attendees of this conference, you probably won't hear from me anything new or innovative that you didn't already know. As outline shows, firstly, I want to point out a couple of well-known facts about archaeological forest research. After that, I will talk about the place of our research and its goals. The main part of my speech will be the general presentation of all stages and methods, mostly described by Kamil in a previous presentation, also used in our research and our somehow chaotical approach to it. And finally, I will summarize everything, explain how it could be done better, and what is worth keeping in mind in the future. For a little more than 5 years, our team have been researching relationships between natural and cultural heritage in woods of Central European lowlands. We thought that this amount of time is enough to develop the most efficient ways of research, but our hubris sometimes led us astray, and we didn't even remember about these basics. Our place of interest, village Neuhaus in Polish, or in Polish Nowoszów, is located today in southwestern Poland, in the middle of Lower Silesian Forest, the largest continuous forest of Poland. The village's location was complicated from the beginning of its history. It was created somewhere in the 14th century at the historical borders of Upper Lusatia, Lower Lusatia, and Lower Silesia. Thanks to the plans of the Prince Bolko II, for a short time it was an important stop on the trade route from Silesia to Lusatia, but shortly after his death, the idea of alternative trade route crumbled to the same way the castle he built in the village, by the hands of the citizens of Görlitz, or in Polish Zgorzelec. With no regards to this episode, throughout most of the history, residents of Neuhaus were occupied with activities typical to a woodland landscape, especially with an iron smelting processes. The village survived many disasters, but finally had been deserted in 1945 during the Second World War. Even today, this place lies on the border, which are visible on the slide, of not one, not two, but 3 forest districts. And everyone here probably realizes how problematic that can be when dealing with permissions for research. Our goal, written in the application for funding, was to study the impact of anthropogenic activities on the natural landscape in prehistory and history. Until our arrival, this place was an archaeological terra incognita, mostly forgotten by scientists, but not metal detectorists and treasure hunters. So in addition, we also wanted to inspect and document what still was visible. But maybe only in my mind, our main and true goal was to find this castle destroyed in 1368 and whose true location seemed to be later forgotten. We only knew that the village spanned many kilometers along the banks of Czerna Wielka River. Of course, the first thing we did was a short trip on the side to look for a small hill, which seemed obvious back then. We even had found one, but pretty soon we discovered that it was purely natural. Only after that we started our work with historical records and old maps, and somehow we narrowed our area of interest mostly to the center of the village, located in this small island. As you can see, some of the buildings are so clearly visible. There's one here and here and here and maybe here. That they are shown even on Google Maps and OpenStreetMaps to this day, mostly incorrectly, but props for them for trying. During the first survey, we discerned a few kinds of areas with different possibilities for a future survey. We avoided marshes, and the southern part of the island was not only covered in a dense vegetation, but also in a slag, the aftermath of the iron ore smelting. So any geophysics there seemed like a waste of time for us. There were also two kinds of forests. A nice one, like the one on this side in this picture, where we could do mostly everything, and another one more difficult, where vegetation was very dense and most of works would be possible only after intense cutting and clearing. And it wasn't like we didn't even want to try it, but we just weren't allowed to. This was probably our biggest failure, and not realizing that some work won't be just not so easy. Nearly every one of them took around something 4 times longer than in an easier terrain. And so, with high hopes and good spirits, we started mapping with the site with a good old total station. Of course, it took a lot of time, especially when due to the dense vegetation, we needed to often change position. But the result of this kind of work are always worth the effort. We didn't have a GPS RTK back then, so all measurements were saved in local coordinates. Two most interesting objects were part of the mill. We can see here, like all the buildings built partially from the bricks and partially from the slag also. And the second one was the biggest building at the site, interpreted by us as the medieval castle. And I still don't know why we thought that calling to newspapers and telling them that we have found a forgotten medieval castle seemed like a good idea for us then, when we just had just begun our work. After that, we made a VTM and started georeferencing our measurements. Although we have sent a request to a proper office for LiDAR data, nearly a month before a start of our first works, its completion took longer than we expected. Not a model, but our request. We got it just after the end of the first season. We had only one point cloud with a nominal density of 4 points per square meter. And when it was good enough for understanding the bigger picture of a whole area, it didn't help us mostly in discerning smaller and singular features. The most useful was just mapping on the site. The most interesting were these terraces visible here and here, for example, which we think that they are the results of intense bulk iron or extraction. In the second season, we return on site with our colleague Piotr Wroniecki. With the use of GPS RTK, we had georeferenced our earlier measurements. This also could have been done only a few scarce places without a canopy, which were here and somewhere around here, because forests were so bad for taking a signal. We have also conducted a geophysics survey, which involved such methods as electrical resistivity and magnetometry, but also due to difficult terrain, we couldn't survey the most interesting spots for us. We also knew that despite all the current works, we were still missing on our map at least a couple of buildings. That's why we undertook once again studying historical records, this time with help of historians. and correlated our data with the 19th century highly detailed map from German Mestichblatt from 1928. Although we have used it earlier during mapping process as a printed out version, it was much easier to analyze when in this kind of situation. This led to finding and mapping more buildings, also some in more distant areas like near the second and third mills. Once again, it was a shame we didn't think about it at this whole beginning, because during this we also have found this picture, which shows a later building Gasthaus or tavern titled as a Schloss, which in German of course means a palace or a castle. And according to our knowledge, it was located in the center of the village and the exact place of the building which we thought as our hypothetical medieval castle. Finally, after all this prep work, we wanted to test our theories, and in most traditional way by doing excavations. We set up 3 trenches. First was near the castle, in the place where some magnetic anomalies were discovered. We also knew that we won't make it in a given time with unearthing all of the building, so we wanted to at least check its vicinity in a search for any medieval artifacts. And we found only 2 fragments of ceramics, so I wouldn't say it's a success. Also, there were also 2 trenches which were located at the cemetery, and they were set up for students of anthropology, whom helped us in our work, so they could study also the biological conditions of past Neuhaus residents. During the surface surveys, we also have most probably found one of the buildings burned down during the 30 Years' War with ceramic tiles and fragments from this period. And of course, using a structure from motion photogrammetry techniques, we have created the 3D models of trenches, found skeletons, and the fragment of this mill. Of course, this technique has its own limitations, but even in this or less dense forest is also viable to use. We also got in contact with local association of explorers and metal detectorists, as they wanted to help us in solving the area, but it led to a singular action. They were very fond of these dense bushes and slag scattered all around the island. So while coming to an end of my presentation, I would like to go back to my list of well-known facts presented previously. As you all have seen, different methods gave us various results depending on many factors, and terrain difficulty was one of the most important ones. We made a lot of mistakes, but most of them were pretty easy to correct. Sometimes it just came down to a better communication of ideas between team members. I'm pretty sure that mostly thanks to storing all of the collected data in a single GIS database, we got anything out of it. Its usefulness is unrivaled, even in a basic research like such as ours. Even if GIS is not a salvation for every of future problems, it certainly is a great fix for many existing ones. I know that these aren't any revolutionary conclusions, but I really hope that in the near future, thanks to the knowledge I will acquire at such splendid meetings such as this conference, someday I will have a possibility to show you something more spectacular. Until that day, I wanted to remind you that sometimes remembering basics can save you a lot of time, which probably in my case is right now coming to an end. So on that note, I would like to thank you for your attention, and also shameless plug, if you wanna write something for us, we the last it's a quarterly publishing, yeah, four numbers in the year, and if you want to publish something in our last issue, which will be on the topic of forest archaeology, we invite you all. We will be more than happy to translate it for you from English to Polish.